Hello, my sweet friends, and welcome to DIY with Nadia. Today, I'm excited you stopped by because I'm sharing my top 30 fall DIYs. Let's get started. For this project, I will be using this Harvest Blessing sign from the Dollar Tree, and the first thing I do is usually just take off the hanging jute cord and just patch those little holes in with some spackle. The one I'm using is my husband's because I could not find my Dollar Tree lightweight one. Either would work just fine. I will be using the back side of this sign, and the first thing I did here is give it 2 coats of chalk paint by Rustic, and the color is linen white. For that faux wood look, I'm just grabbing another sign from the Dollar Tree and using it as a guide to separate my sign into sections. Now I'm just filling in all the lines with a gray acrylic paint by Americana. To make it easier on myself, I grabbed a piece of paper and just folded it in 3. That way it's just easier to go down the line and make sure my lines are nice and straight. To lighten up those gray lines, I'm using some white acrylic paint and I'm almost dry brushing it on. And then I'm just using paper towel to kind of wipe off the excess, and then more gray, more white, whatever I felt like, until my lines made it look like all my wooden pieces kind of had shadow versus having those bold gray lines. The thankful sign that I'm using came in a set of 3 metal words from the Dollar Tree, and all I'm doing is grabbing some acrylic black paint and I'm dabbing on, kind of like when you're stenciling. I'm just dabbing the black paint on, and it took 2 layers to cover everything because it is a piece of metal. To completely seal that black paint, I am using some Mod Podge, and I felt like this really worked, and I was really happy with the end results. So the florals I am using are actually these little bundles from the Dollar Tree. Can you guys believe it? I remember being on a serious hunt last year to find these, and if anyone sees them this year, please let me know because I will definitely be getting more. And so I just grabbed them, folded those ends a little bit in so they're not sticking out, because I really wanted to interlock kind of the florals. That way, see how they're both kind of just facing each other, making this huge floral, and those sides, the sides look like they're just kind of flowing down, and I feel like that floral on top just made the whole sign absolutely stunning. To give my sign a little bit of a character, I decided to grab this antique gold paint marker from the Dollar Tree, and I'm making little stitches throughout the edge of the sign. To attach the thankful sign to the board, I'm using some crazy glue instead of the hot glue gun because I thought the hot glue gun is just too thick and it would definitely show through this thin, delicate sign. For the fall, sweet fall sign, we are going to be using a pizza pan. So I grabbed the pizza pan and gave it about 3 coats of this chalked Rust-Oleum white paint in linen white, and then let it sit and dry completely. Then I'm grabbing these window clings that I got at the Dollar Tree, and what I'm going to do is decoupage basically that wreath and everything inside the wreath, the wording, everything onto my tray, and let it completely dry. Before you set the tray aside for the Mod Podge to dry, make sure there are no bubbles on your tray, just because we are dealing with plastic over paint, and if you leave the bubbles, they might show in the end result. Now I'm grabbing some of these fall berries from the Dollar Tree, taking them from the stem, and here I'm just cutting off the extra branches that go to the side on these little berry stems, and those I will be using to fill in gaps here and there as I'm going around my little sign. Now I'm just hot gluing my branches all around the sign. The nice thing about these berries is they covered any imperfections that were left around the sign because the sign is not completely circular. It kind of goes around the leaves. So this kind of helped camouflage all of that, and I think in the end it looked so beautiful. To hang my wall hanging, I'm just going to grab a piece of jute cord and attach it in the back. In order for my berries not to get hurt, I just put my tray on top of two same size bottles, and my tray stayed even as I was hot gluing the little jute cord to the back. For the decorative bow, I will be using a 2-inch burlap ribbon along with a 5/8 inch grosgrain orange ribbon, and I will be making a sailor bow, or what I like to call a simple bow, with each one of the ribbons. A sailor bow is basically a bow that has a loop on each side and tails. After I'm done making my burlap bow, I'm just grabbing my orange bow and placing it on top of the burlap bow. Then I'm just bringing them together with a little jute cord, tying them really nice and tight, and I'm all done. To complete the look of the bow, I'm just grabbing some scissors, folding all the bow endings in half and making little ducktails. Then I'm just hot gluing my bow to the bottom of my sign. To make the sign, I'm going to use this beach vibes only sign that I had left over from the summer, and the first thing I did was remove that hanging jute cord, and of course had to cover the little holes with some spackle. Then I'm just grabbing some chalked paint by Rust-Oleum and giving my sign about 3 coats of this white paint and then putting it aside to dry. Now it's time to get our truck. This truck from the Dollar Tree is so adorable, but it does not have tires per se outlined. So I'm just grabbing a pencil and outlining to the best of my ability where my black paint is going to go for the tires. To paint the body of the truck, I'm using a chalk paint by Folk Art called Grotto. I realized that the truck has a little hole right there to hang it, and since I didn't want that to be there, I just grabbed some spackle and just filled that little hole in. When the spackle dried, I grabbed some of that Grotto paint and just painted over the area. Next, I'm grabbing some orange acrylic paint and painting the little pumpkins orange. Now I'm just grabbing some brown and painting the truck bed in brown. And then I'm grabbing black and painting all the tires black. Next, it's time to get our silver, and I'm not sure what those things are called, but in the middle of the tires, along with those things that go over the tires, I'm painting those in a silver shade. That way it's metallic and it looks more natural. Now I'm grabbing this felt garland and I'm going to take out 2 orange flags. I'm measuring my flags to be 1.5 inches long, marking the flag and then cutting it out. Now I'm taking these black Dollar Tree letters and I'm going to spell out fall on my flags. And yes, I do realize that stickers do not really stick well to felt, but that's what we have Mod Podge for. What I did was I put the sticker on and really kind of made sure to press down to make sure it kind of stayed there. Then I'm grabbing some Mod Podge and I'm dabbing the Mod Podge onto my little flags. And what I would do is just let one layer dry. Then I would come back and then do another layer of Mod Podge. And I did this 3 times just to make sure those letters are nice and secure. Using a black marker, I did some stitching along the sign. Then I grabbed my glue gun and attached my truck to the bottom right side of my sign. Then this part did not get recorded. I grabbed some jute cord and kind of swayed it on the top left side of my sign and hot glued the edges to the back of the sign. Then grabbing my orange fall flags, I just hot glued them right on top of the jute cord and just made it look like it's a little banner hanging on the side. For this project, I'm going to need a medium pumpkin and a small pumpkin from the Dollar Tree. First, I'm going to give my medium pumpkin 4 coats of the white Rust-Oleum chalked paint in linen white. Then I'm grabbing my little pumpkin, and because it's ivory, I'm just going to give it 2 coats of that same paint just to make sure my medium and a small pumpkin match well together in color. Now I'm grabbing a piece of floral foam, and it's about 2/3 inches in height or 1.5 centimeters, and it is about 2 inches by 2 inches. After I did that, I decided to give my pumpkin a little bit of dimension. So I'm just grabbing some white acrylic paint, mixing it a little bit with a folk art gray owl, and just running a small paintbrush along the little lines in the pumpkin. Then I'm grabbing an empty shabby brush and I'm just smoothing out those lines so they really look like shadows. Now I'm just grabbing some florals from the Dollar Tree, and I bought a whole bunch of them, so I love just using them up little by little. And these are the ones that have little lilac stems on them. They're little purple, long little florals. And I'm just going around and sticking them all around into that foam that I attached to the bottom pumpkin. I don't like the plastic stem that the pumpkins come with, so I'm just using a short piece of wood and I'm sticking it in the middle of the pumpkin. Now I'm just hot gluing the little pumpkin on top of that foam piece. For the candle holders, I will be using 2 small foam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, and because they came in ivory, I did give them 2 coats of chalked white paint by Rust-Oleum. Now I'm grabbing candle holders that I got at the Dollar Tree about 2 years ago, putting the candle right on top of the pumpkin. I'm just tracing around the diameter. Now I'm grabbing an X-Acto knife, tracing the circle of the candle. I went down about 1 inch into the pumpkin until I felt that my candle was nice and stable. For the florals, I will be using these beautiful hydrangeas and fall berries. The first thing I did was take all the hydrangeas off the stem. Then I grabbed some leaves from the hydrangeas and cut off the bottom 1/3 portion. After I did that, I hot glued 3 leaves on each of the pumpkins. Taking the hydrangea flower buds, I'm hot gluing them around the center of the pumpkin and then adding 3 about 2 to 3 inch berry pieces in between the florals. For this project, I started by giving my pumpkin 3 coats of white Rust-Oleum chalked paint in linen white. And then I'm going to grab some moss, which is the Spanish moss from the Dollar Tree, and then some succulents that I also got at the Dollar Tree. And this one is so simple, you guys. All you're going to do is grab just a little bit of that Spanish moss and hot glue it to the top of your pumpkin. Now I'm just grabbing some succulents and just putting them around the pumpkin. For this floral arrangement, I decided to take this glass candle holder that we have all seen from the Dollar Tree and paint it black. Then I'm grabbing a gift box that I got from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to paint that one black too. I decided to paint this black because our floral arrangement is ivory and I think ivory looks so beautiful against black. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. Now I'm just filling the box with some floral foam and I grabbed this round one from the Dollar Tree, cut off the edges so it fits nicely in there, put it at the bottom, and then I grabbed some leftover soft pieces of foam and put them on top to fill the box. I decided to use these gorgeous ivory dahlias as my main flower. I cut down the stems of the flowers between 2 to 3 inches, and as I started to put the dahlias in, I noticed that they were not very stable, so I did decide to grab that soft floral foam and hot glue it in place. To make my arrangement nice and full, I used 2 bouquets of the dahlia flower. Next, I grabbed some ivory berries and I put 3 stems in the floral arrangement. Next, I'm taking 3 of the pine cones from the cotton bundles and also putting them around the bouquet. Now I'm just hot gluing the painted candlestick holder to the middle bottom of my box. I felt like the black box was missing something, so I grabbed Dollar Tree burlap ribbon and I just hot glued 1 row around the box. I'm very sorry I did not get this on camera, but I simply hot glued a horizontal row of the ribbon to my box. For the final touch, I'm adding 2 of these cute little ivory pumpkins and our project is done. After painting my medium-sized Dollar Tree pumpkin white with chalk paint, I'm grabbing some pink iridescent paint. If you don't have the Prima Marketing paint in pink blue, you can always use this gorgeous Craft Smart paint that's called Pink Blush Pearl. And I used it before on my channel when I was working on pearl looking projects. And that was the effect that I was going for on this pumpkin. And it did not disappoint. I absolutely love how this pumpkin turned out. The florals I chose for this pumpkin are these lovely ivory mums, and I just cut the stems to about 2 inches and just stuck them in the pumpkin. These pumpkins are kind of thin, so it was easy to stick the mums into the pumpkin. I first tried the natural colored branches, but they just clashed with all the iridescence and with the flowers. So I decided to use branches that were painted white for a previous project, and I just put them in throughout the bouquet. Next, I'm grabbing some spring florals, and I decided to use these gorgeous little flowers that had these long, beautiful leaves sticking out, and decided to use those. I think it lifted up the pumpkin, and the bouquet just came alive with those gorgeous spring flowers. Now it's time for the bow. I'm grabbing this buffalo check pink and white print, and also this white ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just laying one on top of the other and making a simple bow. I'm bringing the bow together in the middle with a little floral wire. Then I decided to cut the tails about 3 inches long, and I made little duck tails. I think this bow turned out so super cute. Now it's time to complete the bow. I just grabbed another piece of that grosgrain ribbon in white and hot glued it around the center of the bow. I then hot glued my bow to the middle top of my pumpkin. Project, I'm using a foam orange pumpkin from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to give it about 3 coats of white chalk paint to make sure it's nice, clean, and beautifully bright. I'm going to hot glue my candy corn along the seams of the pumpkin. So the first thing I did was turn my pumpkin over. That way I can start from the bottom of the pumpkin and working my way up, because I am going to have florals on top. It's more forgiving in case you have a longer or a shorter candy. And I'm just going to do this all around the pumpkin. I played around a little bit to see which florals work best for the top, and I settled on 3 beautiful orange mums with white berries in the middle, and it looked like the berries were the stem of the pumpkin, so it turned out really cute. Next, we're making a simple bow, but this one is going to be 6 loops, and I'm just going to do the loops freehand, back and forth, and then tie it with a little floral wire. I attached the bow with some glue gun to the center of my pumpkin. While that bow is really beautiful, I just felt like it wasn't standing out with the entire piece, so I grabbed another piece of grosgrain ribbon, just pure white, brought it together with a little wire, and then instead of putting the same ribbon in the middle, I'm actually using a piece of the orange wire to do the center of the bow. Then I just grabbed a white bow and I hot glued it to the center of the other bow. I started off by taking that jute cord from all the pumpkins. Then I'm just putting some lightweight spackle in all the little holes and sanding it down. Any pumpkins that I want to hang, I just use that same jute cord and hot glue it to the back. That way it's not shown in the front of the pumpkin and it's nice and neat. For this pumpkin, I gave it 2 coats of a white chalk paint and then used a dark brown for the little stem. One of the best ways to give a pumpkin dimension is to do these oval kind of outlines, and this just went from a flat pumpkin to a pumpkin that looks like a 3D pumpkin. So I'm just using the colors beige and gray to kind of do that and have the pumpkin stand out a little bit. I will add all the paint colors in the description box below. For this pumpkin, I started with an ivory color and then went over it with a gray owl by Folk Art to give it that dimension and make it look like it's shaded. And then I'm using paper towels to kind of shade in, and then if I went too much a little bit, that's alright. You can always just use your white paint to go over it and clean that up, or just use a paper towel to blend it in. For the bow, I will be using this wired buffalo check ribbon, and I'm going to make a very simple and cute bow. I'm just crisscrossing the tails, finding the middle, and bringing it to the center. Then I'm bringing it together with a little bit of jute cord, and I'm going to cut the tails on an angle. I'm hot gluing the bow to the bottom of the stem of the pumpkin. Then I'm grabbing this cotton bundle from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut off the cotton flower and hot glue it to the center of the bow. That's it. Our farmhouse, very simple, very elegant pumpkin is ready to be displayed. Start this pumpkin, I'm just removing the jute cord, putting in some spackle in the little holes, drying that, and then giving it 1 coat of white paint. I find that it's always good to start with a coat of chalk paint because it covers up everything you need, and then when you're putting a bright color like this orange on there, it just goes on brighter and quicker and with less layers. I gave this pumpkin 3 coats of acrylic paint by Artist's Loft. To shade this pumpkin in, I'm using that same orange that I used for the pumpkin. Then I'm adding some brown to darken it up, and then adding some white to give it a little bit of light. To shade the pumpkin, I'm following the outside lines and just making little lines, curved lines, to give it that 3D effect, and going around the whole pumpkin, giving it a little bit of shade, and I'm just blending it in. And when you add that background color to your outline color, just very lightly, almost like dry brushing, it really makes it stand out and it looks like it's shaded. Now I'm just grabbing that same shade color and I'm doing the stem in that color. I wanted to bring the stem to the front of the pumpkin, so as you can see, I'm making like V-shape little outlines and just coloring that in. Now I'm just using some Dollar Tree stickers and I'm grabbing the word grateful and blessed, and then for the word and, I'm grabbing just some letters from the Dollar Tree and I'm putting them in. And now I'm grabbing some of these branches that were on the same sheet as grateful and blessed and just sticking them to the sides of the pumpkin. For the bow, I'm grabbing some colored raffia from the Dollar Tree, and first I got this brown one and made a small little bow, and then I grabbed an orange one and made a bigger bow. Then I just put the brown one over the orange one right at the center of the stem. For this pumpkin, I'm using a folk art chalk paint called Grotto, and because it's a little darker, I'm just going to add a little bit of white to lighten it up to make this gorgeous teal color and just give it 2 coats. To shade this pumpkin, I'm grabbing some of my leftover teal, adding some zinc by Americana, which is a gray shade, mixing them together and just doing the shading, blending it in with the teal, and it's so cute. For the stem, I'm just coloring it that beautiful zinc gray. I'm grabbing this unbleached titanium color that matches the flowers that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to give 2 coats to this family sign that you can get at Michael's. To decorate, I'm using these florals from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to start with these kind of like twigs and feathers and hot glue them to the center of the pumpkin, or I guess the bottom of the stem. I decided to angle mine down a little bit, that way they're not just sticking out and it looks like they're just hanging so beautifully. And then grabbed these ivory flowers and I used a big one in the middle and 2 little ones to make that floral bundle, and I think it turned out so super cute. Now I'm just grabbing the family sign and I'm hot gluing it to the center of the pumpkin. This pumpkin, I'm going to make it look like it's made out of shiplap. So the first thing I did was grab 2 stir sticks and just made lines because I thought it was just the perfect width for my little boards. Now I'm grabbing some zinc by Americana and using a small flat brush, I'm just making lines. Now I'm just grabbing any shabby brush and just softening that line that I just painted. After that, I'm grabbing some white chalk paint and just dry brushing it over the line to soften that up. And so easy and so quick. I absolutely love this technique. And then I just go ahead and do this to all the lines. When you're done with your project, it looks so realistic and so nice. To complete the project, now we need to make little dents and little nicks in the wood. So I just use the same gray paint I've been using and just make little dots, lines, and then to make it look like maybe there's like an indented hole or something, I just do little circles of gray, and I'll do the same process I did on the lines, which is use a shabby brush to smooth it all out, and then just dry brush some white paint over all those nicks and bumps. That way we have nice, even, and absolutely gorgeous shiplap. Grabbing another shabby brush from the Dollar Tree along with a thankful sign and these leaves that come in a pack of 50 from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to use a stencil method and just kind of stencil the black paint onto the leaf and also onto the thankful sign. To attach the thankful sign to my pumpkin, I'm using some super glue. I've tried using a hot glue gun with these signs. They are just too delicate and too thin, and I just find that super glue works the best for these. I will be making a simple bow for this pumpkin, and here I have this burlap with black polka dots from the Dollar Tree along with the lace ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree. And what I'm doing is I'm just overlaying the lace on top of my burlap ribbon. I'm not hot gluing it in place. I'm just making the bow, bringing it together with the jute cord and fluffing it out. I think it turned out absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to hot glue the leaves a little bit at an angle and just hot glue the bow right in between them. To start this pumpkin, I painted it all with a white chalk paint. Then I gave it 3 coats of the orange and 2 coats of the dark brown for the stem. To make the leopard spots, I'm using a beige color that I mixed with some white chalk paint because the white chalk paint will help it dry a little quicker. If you have a chalk paint that is that beigey color that you're going for, I would definitely use a chalk paint over acrylic for this part. While my big pumpkin is drying, I'm grabbing this football #fall sign and grabbing one of those little pumpkins out of there, and I'm going to paint it in the same color that I painted my little dots with. Now I'm grabbing these letters from the Dollar Tree. I already used B from this packet, so I actually cut out the outline for it. Then I glued it to the front of my pumpkin, colored in black. Then I grabbed some of my ivory color and outlined the B so it's nice and clean. Next, I outlined the holes that are usually in the letter B and just filled them in with a little bit of that same ivory paint. To add a little bit of dimension to the pumpkin, I'm just grabbing a little bit of black and adding it to the ivory I've been using and just making streaks from top to bottom of the pumpkin and blending them in with a little paper towel. To complete the little pumpkin, I'm just grabbing some black acrylic paint and I'm painting the stem black. Going back to the big pumpkin, I'm just grabbing some of the black paint that I've been using and I'm outlining all the circles. I'm not making a full outline. I'm leaving some space open, as you can see. And on the big ones, I make even like 3 lines, but mostly it was 2 lines, one on top, one on the bottom. And I think it absolutely turned out beautiful. I decided to make some shabby bows for the little pumpkin and the big pumpkin. And for the little pumpkin, I cut all the ribbon to 4-inch strips. And for the big pumpkin, I cut all the ribbon into 7-inch strips. And I just used different types of ribbon, including grosgrain, some Dollar Tree lace, all kinds of ribbon that I felt that went really well with the pumpkins, and just tie them together with this black ribbon that I had on hand. Then I hot glued both of the bows to the bottom of the pumpkin stems. For this next pumpkin, I will be using metallic colors or very iridescent colors. I got these paints as a gift from my friend, and the colors I will be using are pink blue, aqua rose, vintage rose, and they're very iridescent. So after giving my pumpkin 2 coats of chalk paint, I'm grabbing these iridescent colors and just outlining the pumpkin starting from the darkest shade and filling it in with the lighter ones. I'm not affiliated with this company because I did get this as a gift from a friend, but I absolutely love the way these paints work, you guys. So I will link it down below in case you're interested in getting these paints. For the stem, I could not just use a brown color. I'm using a color called Brass Hardware, and it's this kind of like a darker gold shade, and it looks so perfect with the iridescent pinks. I'm decorating my pumpkin with these beautiful florals from the Dollar Tree. I thought they were very elegant. I'm just layering them to the side and hot gluing them in place. For the bow, I'm using this burlap ribbon and I'm just going to make a simple bow, but I am going to hot glue some satin white ribbon that I had on hand to the middle of the bow. This made it look so elegant and beautiful. Now I'm just crisscrossing the tails, then finding the center, bringing it to the middle of the bow, and I'm just using some floral wire to bring the bow together. Grabbing another piece of that satin white ribbon, I'm just hot gluing it to the center of the bow and securing it in the back, of course, and hot gluing it to my pumpkin. Now I'm just grabbing some leftover flowers and making it look like they're cascading from the left side of the pumpkin. For this pumpkin, I gave it 2 coats of white chalk paint. Then I'm grabbing this metallic iridescent color. I will link it down below, and it is called Dark Velvet. This paint is gorgeous beyond words because it's this iridescent purple color, and every time I look at it in different light, it's a different shade. Very, very beautiful. I'm taking yellow acrylic paint and I'm going to paint the stem of the pumpkin. Then using that same yellow paint, I'm going to be dry brushing the outline of the pumpkin, giving it dimension, and then a little bit inside the 3 sections of the pumpkin. Now I'm just taking letters from the Dollar Tree to spell fall. These letters come in 2 sets, a yellow set and a white set, and 1 letter per set. So what I did was I grabbed a yellow letter E and made it into an L. Now I'm just grabbing some fall twigs that I got at the Dollar Tree and hot gluing them to the center bottom of the pumpkin and putting a little sunflower in the middle. Then I'm just hot gluing the letters in place and the pumpkin is done. For this pumpkin, I decided to use actually the front of the pumpkin, and I'm just scraping off all the sparkles and giving it a good 3 coats of orange paint. I wanted my stem to be ivory, so I first gave it 2 coats of white paint, and then I painted with the ivory color that I wanted. Now I'm grabbing this doily from the Dollar Tree. They come in a set of 2, and you can find them by the kitchen towels. After centering my doily the way I wanted it on the pumpkin, I'm just using Mod Podge to decoupage it straight onto the pumpkin. I let my pumpkin dry for 4 hours, and now I'm cutting off all the excess around the edges of the pumpkin. Now I'm grabbing some natural and orange raffia, and I'm just gathering it to make a shabby bow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 bows and crisscross them. After tying the raffia in the middle with some floral wire, I'm just taking and cutting the edges off so it's nice and even, and both of my little bows are the same length. Now I'm just taking my raffia bows and hot gluing one horizontally and the other one vertically right on top of it. Then I'm just grabbing a floral that I have from last year and hot glued it to the center of the raffia bow. I first painted this pumpkin teal all over, and then I'm just adding a little bit of white and giving white streaks to the pumpkin to give it dimension. To decorate this pumpkin, I'm using these beautiful floral decals from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to be sticking them onto the pumpkin without using the stems that are on the stickers. A lot of these stickers I did try to put like they are going around the pumpkin and cutting off the excess. I first wanted to make the stem brown, but very quickly I noticed that it clashed with a gorgeous teal color, so then I let it dry and I painted the stem gray. For the bow, I'm grabbing pink, purple, and ivory lace from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make a nice big bow. I laid the lace one on top of each other, found the center, and just made a loop to the left and a loop to the right and brought it together with some floral wire. Now I'm just evening out the tails and hot gluing the bow to the pumpkin. this next pumpkin, we are going to be using some craft paper, and this is 12 by 12 paper, and we are going to be decoupaging it onto our pumpkin. I chose this beautiful fleur-de-lis print, and the first thing I did was outline the pumpkin onto my paper and cut it out. Using Mod Podge, I attached the paper straight to my pumpkin, and then I gave another layer of Mod Podge over the paper. Now I'm taking a harvest sign from the Dollar Tree and I'm painting it a beautiful antique white. I gave the sign 2 coats of the paint. When the sign dried, I did put some Mod Podge over the sign to seal in the paint. Using this buffalo check ribbon from the Dollar Tree, I'm cutting off a piece that's a little longer than the length of the pumpkin, and I'm going to hot glue it to the back of the pumpkin. Next, I'm grabbing this grosgrain ribbon that's 2 inches wide, and I'm putting it over the buffalo check ribbon and also hot gluing it to the back of the pumpkin. Using crazy glue, I attached the harvest sign to the middle of the pumpkin, and now I'm grabbing more black grosgrain ribbon, but this one is 1.5 inches, and I'm just making a simple bow and bringing it together with some floral wire. For the tails of my bow, I decided to make them ducktails. I folded them in half, cut them at an angle, and then cinched a little bit with a Dollar Tree lighter. After hot gluing the bow to the center of the pumpkin, I'm grabbing these decorative pumpkins and I'm going to cut one on a slant, so not in half but a little bit to the side, because I want the center of the pumpkin to be facing a little bit forward. Here I'm just hot gluing a piece of stick as the stem for the pumpkin. And to complete the pumpkin, I'm just hot gluing the cute little pumpkin onto the center of the bow. For this project, I'm using a pumpkin sign from the Dollar Tree, and the first thing I did was remove the little leaf. And let me tell you, the struggle was real on this one because that leaf did not want to go loose. But when I was done with the leaf, I just put that to the side, and I'm going to paint the back of the pumpkin white. And I gave it about 3 coats of white chalk paint until I saw it nice and white. Next, I'm grabbing some black chalk paint and I'm going to paint the stem of the pumpkin black. Here's the bag of candy corn that I bought, and it's 2.5 pounds, which is more than enough for all the projects that I'm doing today with candy corn. Next, I'm grabbing some candy corn, laying them around the top of the pumpkin how I wanted to see them, and then just started to hot glue all the way around the pumpkin. To decorate the pumpkin, I'm grabbing this cute little scarecrow, and it was on a stick, so I just broke the stick off and removed it. And I'm just hot gluing this little guy to the pumpkin. And now I'm just grabbing some of these Dollar Tree letters, and I'm going to spell out the word boo. And I'm putting it smack in the center of my pumpkin. To complete the project, I'm going to make a little bow, and I'm using some raffia. Now, this natural color raffia is pretty dry, so I didn't want to do anything but just take it and just kind of keep it in my hands. And then I'm adding some orange raffia to it, and that one was way stronger. And then I took another piece of orange raffia and I used it as a tie for my little bow. I just tied it in the center of the bow. And when it was nice and tight, I just dabbed a little hot glue on there so it keeps it sealed, and then hot glue it straight onto my pumpkin. Okay, now I have a little pumpkin here, and I actually did a video with 10 of these pumpkins that I did. I will link it up here, but I decided to do a black and white one because I put a whole bunch of them when I was preparing to do that video. So, of course, the first thing we always do is cover the little holes. Now I'm grabbing the harvest sign from the fall sets that they have. I love these sets. And I'm just tapping the white paint in. I'm not really painting, I'm tapping. I find that's the best way to get that paint in. And then after about 2 to 3 coats, I do put a little bit of Mod Podge on it, and it seals it really, really beautifully. And I usually cover from both sides. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this part white, and I'm going to do the black section later, and then I want the tip to be black and the bottom part to be black. So for now, we're just going to do 2/3 of white chalk Rust-Oleum paint. You want to do the same thing?
Yeah. I want the brush.
Okay, I'm going to give this pumpkin a second coat. As you saw, a little hand coming through. That's my little niece. And, you know, when someone's painting, she wants to join in. Right, Mila?
Yeah, I want to.
Yeah, you want to join in. Now I'm grabbing some painter's tape. And before I section off where I'm going to paint black, I'm going to bring my harvest sign and just see where I want it. And then I'll just mark off where I want to paint. And then I'll just adjust the bow. Pretty much half. See, if you take a look at it, pretty much half. Maybe I want to just a little lower. For the bow, I'm going to be working with 4 inches on each side, so 8 inches together. I'm going to overlap the first one 2 inches, and then I'm just going to zigzag up. So I have my first loop, and I'm going to do 3 loops like this. Okay, so for now we have 2 inches overlapping, and we have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 on each side. I'm going to put it in the middle, and then I'm going to we're gonna make a little loop in the middle. So I'm just going to overlap it and cut it at the end. So just give it a little slag. So if I want my bow in the middle, my little, bow in the middle to be 2 inches, just do an extra 2 inches. So this I'm going to loop in, just loop it in. So here's my bow, and it's looped in, as you can see right here. So super easy, you just saw me zigzagging. So I have my first end overlapping 2 inches, and then my ending overlapping 2 inches. I'm going to bring it together, grabbing a floral wire. I'm going to tie it nice and tight. So that was a 2-second bow, that's it. It wasn't that complicated, it was easy to do. And now I'm just going to fluff my bow out. And I love the black and white, but we are going to bring in some greenery. I have my bucket of the spring florals that I absolutely adore, and I use as much as possible in my projects, and they're at the Dollar Tree. I promise, the full Dollar Tree DIY. See the ends that go on the actual wire? They usually are rounded and a little bit on the thicker side. So I like to cut those off. And the ones I'm getting right now, they're from this bundle that has this little purple kind of floral. this project, I will be using this kind of like a gift tag, which was from the nautical section of the spring collection. And then I'm going to be using these leaves, these wooden leaves from the Dollar Tree, and I went ahead and put in some Dollar Tree spackling in the little holes because they come with little holes like right here, and they come in a set of 5, so 4 of them I'm going to do, but I really want them to be nice and flat, so I decided that on the side that I'm going to be painting, I decided to do 1 more before I sand it down, just to make sure it's nice and smooth. So as usual, we'll take the tag off first. So I decided to go ahead and spackle the little holes in the sign. Also, I'm one of those people, I don't really like the jute cord the way Dollar Tree has them. If I need to hang this piece, I would just hot glue a piece of jute cord in the back right here. You can actually use the same one, really, but this is how I prefer it. So I'm going to let this dry, and the next thing I'm going to do is grab this Craft Smart chalky paint and give this 2 coats of nice, beautiful black paint. Okay, now I'm just taking the leaves and I'm going to sand them down. Now I'm just grabbing some white chalk paint and I'm going to be painting the leaves. I'm guessing it's going to take maybe 2 coats at the most because this is really light. There's no design on it. So for the leaves, well, I wanted to do something different for the stem, and I'm going to be using these stickers, which are super close to the Dollar Tree ribbon that you can use. But I'll try to find this and put it in the description box. I got this on eBay a long time ago, and I'm just cutting off a little piece. And as I said, you could definitely do this with ribbon, just cut it off and you could hot glue it, but it's just easier when it's a sticker. And I'm just going to cover it from here and cover it from here. And so we have a little checkered stem. I thought it was going to be so cute. Now I'm taking these letters from the Dollar Tree. Grabbing some florals from the Dollar Tree. These are the spring little florals. I'm going to grab the ones with the purple flowers, have these pretty little stems here. And I'm just going to cut off that hard edge. For the bow, I will be using this beautiful buffalo check ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and this is 5/8 of an inch. So is this one, and this is a grosgrain ribbon from the Dollar Tree. So what I always like to do is measure out how much I'm going to need. And I want the tail to be a little bit on the bigger side. Measure my bow. There, you can always cut it shorter later. And then I'm going to cut 2 of the buffalo check ones. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a buffalo check, then I'm going to have the white grosgrain, then buffalo check on top. Bring it together, find the middle, and when you find the middle, that's when we're going to do a loop number 1, a loop number 2, and we're going to bring it together. I'm just grabbing a piece of chenille wire here. I like using wire for these types of bows because when I'm making a bow that I need to manipulate, meaning I want to move around and I need to move my little, you know, the way I want the tails to hang, it's just easier to do it when you use a piece of wire to bring it together. Before I do the center, I like to actually open the bow up. For this project, I'm going to be just using one of these pots that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I just took this whole thing out, and I'm going to take this stuff off. Okay, now I'm going to take my little pot and give it a few coats of the white. And this is white chalk paint by Rust-Oleum in linen white. Okay, our little pot is ready. I put a tiny bit of the green foam in there, the floral foam. And I'm going to grab just a tiny bit more. There you go. I'm going to put just a little bit of greenery. And I'm going to start in with my sunflowers. And these come a pack of 6. And I'm just going to start putting the sunflowers in the pot. Okay, and I'm just making a little dome out of them, just like this. Okay, now I'm grabbing some of this it's kind of like a brown jute cord, but it just says ribbon on here from the Dollar Tree. Okay, to finish up this cuteness over here, I'm just going to put a little bow on it. And this bow is just a ribbon from the Dollar Tree. It's kind of like jute cord, except it's brown. And this is not a complicated little bow. I just made a simple bow. And I'm just going to hot glue it in place. And how sweet is this? Okay, for this project, I'm going to be recycling this little piece, and I'm just going to sand it down because of the paint right here. It's not going to show through what I'm going to make, but that's all right. I just want to make it smooth. Okay, I'm going to cover this with cardstock, and as you can see, you cannot see anything through it. So I'm going to basically start by hot gluing to the back. Now I'm just cutting this back kind of like the extra back wall. I'm cutting it right there. That's all I did. Now I'm going to bring it around nice and taut right here. I'm going to cut it right here. And as I said, this is not regular paper. This is heavy duty paper. You can't, I have the light shining on here and you can't see my hand. So this is thick paper that I'm using. Hot gluing it right here. Cutting this back part right here. We have our crease lines right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut along the crease line right here, fold this in, give it a little dab of glue so it holds right there, and then I'm going to bring this up over and back and give it a little bit of glue. So the first thing we want to do, and that's like the scariest part, is the rub-on that I prepared. Okay, so this I got at a craft store, I don't even know where, possibly Hobby Lobby, a very long time ago. And this is rub-on love quotes. I'll attach if I find a similar one. And this is the one I decided to use. And this is why I didn't paint this or anything like that, because when you're doing one of these, it's just, you can't do it. You can do it on paint, but I trust it on paper a lot more. Oh, this is so pretty. Now this is where, if you want, you could put Mod Podge over to seal it. That is absolutely up to you. Now I'm going to take one of these sunflowers from the Dollar Tree. I'm gonna put that right on top. And to bring the brown together with everything, I'm going to use this ribbon right here. Is basically what I call jute cord that's been colored. And I'm going to just tie it and make a cute little bow. And my little quote reads, "Love puts the fun in together, the sad and apart, and the joy in the heart." How adorable is that? And I think this turned out so cute. Reminded me of my scrapbooking days. I used to love scrapbooking, and actually this is where that's from. And I'm just so glad that I can use something from those days. Okay. So the first sign is going to be from the Dollar Tree, and it's one of these shadow boxes in the back, and in the front I'm going to somehow try to remove this. So I will be painting this in this chalky paint, and it's black. It's solid black. In my inspiration picture, the fireplace mantle was a brown shade, so the pictures on there were like a dark brown, but my fireplace is black, all black. So I kind of wanted that to blend in, and well, I want it to look nice. The pictures I'm not going to be copying exactly. I wanted to make it unique to me and what fits in my home decor. But I'm definitely using their inspiration and what they had. So let me just paint, and then we will move on. So while my surface is drying, or my little shadow box is drying, I'm grabbing this little, I think this is a maple leaf from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to keep the stem for now, just to kind of give me a little bit of a hold, but later on I will take this part off. And now we are going to the white. I have white Rust-Oleum that I love using. And for this, I'm going to use a brush like this, because I want to paint the leaf. I love the black and white contrast. That's actually what drew me to Farmhouse. It just, I don't know why, it looks so sleek. And some people don't think white is a color, but it definitely is a color to me. Alright you guys, so the next two signs are going to be identical. This is from the Dollar Tree last year, and it's that football one where it's pumpkin, football, pumpkin, football, pumpkin. So I'm going to take two of the pumpkins, I just sanded it down where the staples were so it's nice and smooth for when I put my chalk paint on. So while that's drying, I'm going to work on these. And these I got at Hobby Lobby, I want to say. Originally $5.99, I paid 90% off. So yeah, this was amazing. So for this, I will be using black once again. Black usually covers a lot better than white, and 2 coats I find, especially with the chalk paint, is more than enough. Because it really shows that division, I'm just going to use a little tiny brush and I'm going to go on the inside and make sure that that's painted on the inside. Alright, so I have my sign. That's the one that has a little stand on there. And I'm just going to hot glue this straight on. Now it's time to make the banner. I have nice thick cardstock to make my banner. And in my inspiration piece, the banner is black with white letters, but because my fireplace is completely black, I'm going to do white with black letters. Alright, so I'm going to measure off at 4 inches. If you just had a little cutter, but apparently mine grew legs and just disappeared. These are the letters I'll be using, and this is from the Dollar Tree. So I think I'm just going to put a letter so I can see where I want, how long I want it to be. Alright, I'm ready to do my fall little banner. I just clipped off where I want my letter F to start. Okay guys, here's this little one, and I kept on debating whether to remove this arm right here, and I decided to definitely remove it. It's just when I was attempting to try the florals that I wanted, it just looked like it was just getting in the way, and so yeah, we are removing that. And now I'm just removing this, the little berries in the front. Not throwing them out though. Christmas is coming. I'm sure I can use the berries somewhere. To paint, I decided to choose this pretty little gray. And I just basically mixed white and black chalk paint. And then I'm just going to paint the basket with this pretty gray. I feel like the basket's a little too dark, so I'm just adding a little bit of white and just see the difference. I just want it to be a little lighter. Okay, you guys, it is all painted, and I like this gray, and I love the fact that I lighten it up. So I'm just grabbing some floral foam. As you can see how out of shape this basket is, and that's why I'm glad I took that little arm out, and I'm just going to push this in. Yeah, this is really, there you go. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be nice and tight in there. I do have a little piece that I want to put in here. Okay. So I decided to start out with some of these little greenery, and this was thrifted from Goodwill. And you know, starting out with greenery is always a good idea. And then I'm going to use these. I got at the Dollar Tree. Okay, you guys, to bring this whole beauty together, I decided to put a little bow in the front. So to tone it down, I am going to use burlap. And then I decided, because there's a little hints of white here and there, this is not pure white, this is a little bit on the ivory side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this, and let's see here. I already tried this to make sure that I have the burlap where I wanted. So this is what the little bow is gonna look like. And as I said, I'm making a simple bow. I'm going to lay this one on top, and just at the point where it's going to be, because I don't want to have too many hot glue marks. So if we do this, then our next one is going to be right there. And then once I actually have the bow made, I will fold it over and give it a little dot of hot glue, and then cut the excess off. And then here, let's just measure where we want it, right there. So the little dot goes right here. By the way, you guys, if you want me to show you how I do some of my bows, let me know. I do different bows, and I don't use the Bow Deborah. I would eventually probably will get one, but right now I'm okay. So I just made a simple bow, as you see, and I'm going to bring it together. I just have a little wire, whatever you have on hand. I always say, whatever's the hottest near you, take it. Sometimes I use wire, sometimes I use you know, needle and thread, whatever. You just need to bring that bow together. We are crafters. This should be fun. Okay, made it nice and tight. And now, see, this is loose, so it looks like it doesn't look very tight. There's no marks on there. It looks really nice and sweet. You guys agree with that? And I'm just going to cut the excess off on both sides. Looks like this tail is just a little bit longer. go. Okay. Nice and smooth it out. Fold it over. And just a little dab of hot glue. Fold it over. Loosely, it doesn't need to be tight. Just loosely. I am actually going to use this to kind of poke it inside, but I do want to cover this part, so I'm just going to grab another piece. All right, what do you guys think? I know it's a little busy, but it's fall colors and it's supposed to look, you know, fallish, and it's supposed to have a little bit of charm, a little bit of country. It has little pumpkins and even a little pine cone that I didn't think I was going to use, but this is how it turned out. Okay, so I did my best to remove everything just because the foam, I didn't want to deal with the foam. I am going to put some floral foam on the inside, and I did take the legs down, but this stuff is just, it's some kind of green goo, and it's absolutely like permanent on there. It won't budge. So I decided just to grab a little Clorox disinfecting wipe, and I'm just wiping this down before before we're gonna paint. I just want to make sure that the surface is nice, clean, because this was dusty. This, who knows where it was standing, and so I do want it to make sure that it's really, really nice and clean before I spray paint it. So first I'm going to use this white primer just because it's so red, and then I decided to use this. It's patent primer and it's satin bright white. Alright, so my second piece, I also got at Goodwill on that Christmas in July sale. And so here is a piece that fell off on the way home. And there are metal tabs that kind of held this in place. And I need to take those off along with a metal tab that's still here. And then, so this was, it looks like they bought it somewhere for $2.95. Then one, it was 59 cents and I bought it for 30 cents. So same thing, we're going to, you know what, I'm going to make my life easier and use wire cutters here. Okay, I got these little guys off. And so, of course, now I'm going to give it a really, really good sand down. I'm just using the sandpaper from the Dollar Tree. Alright, I sanded the front and all the sides until I saw no more shine, because it was quite, you know, it had a nice layer of lacquer on it, some sort of lacquer. And I'm going to give it a few coats of white chalk paint. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to need 3 layers because this green is really, really dark. Okay, so this board is nice and painted. I'm going to take this ribbon, which the Dollar Tree has every year. It's just maybe different print, but I bought this last year, so you can either do gold, and the gold really does look nice on the white, right? But we are going to do silver. So on one side it's gold, on the other is silver. I thought that's so pretty. Okay, so you could do this one of two ways. You can just take it, I guess, wrap around, hot glue it in the back, cover the sides. Option 1. I decided to do option 2, which is Mod Podge. The reason for that is because, let's not forget, this is Dollar Tree ribbon, and I can't guarantee that this is going to stay nice throughout the years. So I did decide to use the Mod Podge for this process. And I'm just going to give it a nice healthy helping of Mod Podge, but not too much. It's a fairly thin ribbon, so I think it's going to stick really, really nicely. Another coat of Mod Podge. And after this, I am going to let it dry. Just sit it down, let it dry completely. I want this nice and sealed. Okay, it's been about 2.5 hours since I did this, if not 3. And so I'm just going to cut along the edge here. Okay, so now that we have this, I'm going to take this burlap I got from the Dollar Tree. And this is going to go all the way around. Pull it nice and tight and do the same thing on the other side. Alright, I'm going to put this aside for just a second, and I'm going to grab one of these leaves. And this is from one of the pumpkins. They all come with the little leaf. And I do want to take this little bow off, because I think I want my own bow here. On top of here, I'm going to put the word harvest, and this I'm going to hot glue right here. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of the leaves and just, you know what, maybe I'll grab another one. Wouldn't it be cute to have 2? One would be cute, but I think 2 would be even cuter. It's the beauty of crafting. You can do whatever your heart desires, right? And don't forget, this is metal. Me pressing in like that, realizing that it's hot. That was fun just now. I was going to take this, and it's basically an orange jute cord that's really, really curly. Seems like the other end is really curly too. Why not use that to our advantage, right? Curl it and make it work here. And I'm going to open this up, and I'm just going to hot glue it right there. Super simple, right, you guys? I think this turned out absolutely cute. I hope you like it. Okay, I officially love it. Okay, so now I'm going to grab whatever's left of this orange twine. I'm going to grab an awl and just make holes where the little wire used to be. And I'm going to pull my cord through. just going to loop it right here. Louis was such a good puppy. He stayed with me the whole video. What did you guys think? How did I do on my little transformations? Let me know down below in the comments area. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing and hitting that thumbs up button. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys. Bye.